Evening. Hey, Andy.
Good evening. How are you?
Well, let's say I've had better days, but I'm committed to having these conversations. So I'm glad we can be back. Um,
That's all we require of you, comrade. Commitment,
oh yeah, uh,
commitment to the
it's
cause, to the current cause.
well. That's the interesting thing. I don't think we're having a very subversive cause here. We're not having conversations with the end goal of having somebody elected or for a certain gain. And this is the funny thing about our conversations. They have been like this for years now, and everybody that all our detractors imply we're having a hidden agenda. Yet somehow, time and time again, they fail to produce the evidence for our, as you said.
Well, that's because they don't work on the basis of evidence. They work on the basis of hearsay and rumors. And once you actually tell them or ask them to produce any evidence, they just disappear.
I think this is a very important point you're making here because too many of our conversations on especially in the online space where the attention span is quite limited and a lot of people are there just for the show, for the circus. It's interesting to see how many of these conversations employ only one type of argument, the logical fallacies. And I've been thinking for a while that I should maybe get one of those Steam decks, not Steam decks, Stream decks. Um, I'm not plugging in a product here, but people in the familiar with streaming know those. Do you know what that is? The Elgato thing that has buttons on it. Basically, they are macros shortcuts.
Yeah.
And I thought about programming or creating a device that has one and one purpose only, creates macros for all the logical fallacies. It's time and
uh,
time again you encounter them, and you're like, oh man, here we go again. Here's
Well,
another
you might,
story.
you might go out of business actually because these guys can produce standard fallacies faster than any device that you might invent could. It's they just they spew fallacies all the time. So, well, yeah, enough about us. I mean, well, let's talk about what's happening, and we'll probably talk about them as well. And I would point out there is a book by a U.S. senator that his name escapes me right now who overall I think he's a pretty well-rounded conservative, and he actually has a book that's called Them, and it's about this thing where the about dehumanizing your neighbor,
Oh yeah,
for
it's Ben Sass,
having. I mean,
right?
it's an excessive tribalization that's happening, and I mean it's normal for people to have differences to have, but now since everything is so international, people are the tribes become larger without a tribesman ever even seeing each other. So it's a new dimension that we'll probably have to adapt to, or try to integrate somehow into society without everyone going crazy.
It's interesting you're mentioning this idea of tribes, and I've seen time and time again this argument being made. The idea that our points, our ideas, our takes on things are not have a zero value or have a negative value because we belong to a certain tribe. Funny enough, the people that are saying these things, and we're not talking here especially about us because I'm not going to pretend I'm a victim of some sort of attack. I'm talking about the way we um, develop our conversations, or let's say regress our conversations by employing this tactic. We label somebody as belonging to a certain group as a way of invalidating their point. Yet we have no proof that that person belongs to that group, except our projection and our desire to make sure that by associating somebody with a certain group, let's say we're in the 50s and the 60s, and we need to make sure the politician doesn't have any traction. So we immediately say they've been known to uh, take to attend
Yeah.
KKK uh, rallies. There is no proof for that, but as soon as you mention KKK, people are like, "Oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
we know who
you
this guy
know,
is."
the funny thing is that even if someone does belong to a different tribe, so to speak, singling them out and attacking them solely on the basis of their being a part of another tribe kills any conflict resolution, any chance at conflict resolution, and which leads me to believe that some of these people that just attack you based on what tribe you belong to, they don't actually intend on, they have zero intention of de-escalating, of finding a solution to of finding I'm not going to say a middle ground, because there are issues that don't really have a middle ground,
Yeah.
but actually trying to reach out to you and convince you that they're right. So right now what they're doing is basically weaponizing what they try to pass as dialogue, but it's not. It's pure weaponization of speech, and I would say that it's even in a way it's the weaponization of lack of speech, because they will, most of them will pretend that you, not only that you uh, you know don't speak against something or for something, they'll demand that you imitate their speech, that you imitate their platform, whatever platform they support, they're supposed to support. And this uh, takes me to Peterson's case, which in a different setting, in the setting of uh, uh, gender fluidity or whatever, he has been fighting the same thing. He has been fighting against compelled speech. And what strikes me is that while these guys are trying to weaponize this speech, they're especially within the let's say so-called conservative circles, what they're doing is emulating a behavior, a speech behavior, a dialogue behavior that is specific to uh, extreme left movements and parties, where there is no there is no dissidency, there is no way of you being not agreeing with what they're saying, or any different opinion is immediately sanctioned, and then you are taken through a struggle session to that it's supposed to correct your ways.
Yeah, it's very disheartening because the crux of this is we cannot have um, freedom if we do not have conversations. And this is something that I strongly believe, even though it's rarely discussed, the fact that freedoms need to be defined, and freedoms need to be defined on the idea that everybody has a voice. If I do not have a voice, if I am not allowed to say what I think, immediately it means somebody else is deciding what my freedom looks like.
Right.
It immediately means others are deciding upon the lives of the rest.
Yeah, because
And
they get to make the decisions. They made it to make. They get, or they would like to get to make the decision of what is right and what is wrong. And no matter how much they speak about democracy and liberal democracies, their behavior is opposed to that. They're not the way the way they relate to other people, especially to people that they may not agree with, is it's definitely, it has nothing to do with democracy, with liberal democracy, with liberalism in especially with classical liberalism. So yeah, they're really acting 100% contrary to their stated political color.
It's this whole idea where we need to get people in line, and there is only one line, there is only one, and we talked about this in previous episodes
Yeah,
about the whole idea that we need to agree with everything, otherwise we'll be expelled out of the tribe.
right.
And I love that you mentioned Ben Sass' book, and
Oh yeah, Ben Sass. Yeah, I
yeah, I'll put it
keep
here.
forgetting his name. Yeah.
This idea that we hate each other and tribalism has reached peak insanity nowadays, based on so little. So there are so few requirements for people to ostracize others, to hate on others. And it's interesting why I wanted to put the image of the cover. It's interesting how Ben Sass writes this book, not from the perspective, why is this happening, but with the purpose of let's heal, let's solve the problem, let's get back our peaceful cohabitation. And I think one of the things that we've seen over the past few years, maybe even more, is this idea that people do not want coexistence, people want submission. People do not want more freedom, people want more power. And what we've seen in these conversations is the idea that you're not allowed to speak because what you speak goes against our beliefs, our values. Therefore, you need to be canceled because there is no way we can accept your existence and the spreading of your ideas. You're only allowed to speak once you belong to our tribe. Otherwise, we're here to make sure you're going to be canceled. There is no way in or at least that's what I'm seeing. We're not having conversations about how we can solve problems. We're not having conversations about what our actions are doing to the next step of our development. All we're talking about is about winning the war, about winning the war of ideas, winning the elections, winning the everything. It's just win, win, win. But we're forgetting that if we have this attitude, let's say we win the next elections, whoever we is, if the purpose is to win, all it does is antagonize the other side. All it does is make the other side more willing to compromise in order to win the next election. And we're not having a real dialogue anymore. We're not having a real conversation anymore. Every topic we discuss, every topic we approach seems to be okay, let's see who has the right to subdue the other side. And this is frightening to me because it means we're moving away from a culture of dialogue, a culture of ideas, and we're in a constant power struggle. Whoever has the power has the ability to impose more and more sanctions, let's say.
No, we have a culture of ideas, but it's not just it's just your ideas, Jazz, that
Yeah.
do not belong to this culture. You understand? So it's okay to have a culture of ideas, but that culture will be very carefully selected, and there is a type of husbandry that's being done, like in agriculture, where we very carefully select what seed is worth reproducing and what seed we should just go into the garbage. So this is what they're doing, and this is what they're doing in it's basically a political thing. It's the socialist politician's dream of um and his own image of being a gardener,
Oh yeah.
and the garden and the plants is everyone else that he's supposed to serve, and his endeavor is to decide to elect which are who's the weed, who's the flowering plant, who's the legume or whatever, and we're supposed to just take his word. And this is I'm not the first to notice this. I think the first one was Bastiat, actually, in the middle of 19th century, noticing this tendency of politicians to treat people as not as people. And recently, I think there was a EU commissioner, I think. I don't remember his name, and it was not Thierry Breton. It was someone else, who actually referred to Europe as our garden, and everywhere else as being some savage uh, borderland that's, and that has weeds creeping towards the garden, the heavenly garden that is the European Union. So and he said, he literally kind of had this attitude where he definitely cast himself and other European leaders as the ones that should be uh, taking care of this garden.
Well, it comes to this grab of power where people think, politicians especially, think they are entitled to dictate, and it's funny how they keep saying that they do it in the name of democracy. They're here to protect the people that are not allowed to have certain opinions, that are not allowed to vote certain ways, and I know it sounds a bit strange because you might say, okay, what if people choose poorly? And that happens from time to time. Actually, it
Yeah,
happens
and it's
quite
their right to
often
choose poorly.
nowadays. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not their right to choose. They will bear the consequences. A lot of people will bear the consequences of these poor choices. But this whole idea that you are not allowed to choose because we, the gardeners, know better than you, we have decided beforehand which seed is gonna yield the best fruit. Therefore, we're not gonna plant that. We know that's not gonna be a good. We haven't tested it. We haven't uh, give it the chance to prove us wrong. But we already know beforehand what's gonna happen. And let me get. We rambled a bit. Let's say without a specific topic
But I
in
would say
mind.
it's a useful rambling, especially
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
and we'll probably be getting back to this year, because the more we get into the problems of this year, the war in Ukraine, the elections in the United States and in Europe and in Romania, um, people have been they invented this new word where it was a post-truth era or fake news. But what we're talking about is lies. What happens is that the level of lies, of just blatantly lying and ignoring the truth, has become somehow it's not even is disheartening in a sense, but in another way it's just ridiculous. You point to people you give them facts, you give them factual proof, and they will just refuse to deny it and come up with this crazy ideas, that the crazy concepts and crazy accusations, just hurling them around. So yeah, this is obviously something we're going to come back to, because I think if there is one thing that we've been trying to do here in our talks, is to focus on the truth as well as we can do, and to the best of our abilities, and
Factual
trying
based,
to.
factual truth. I mean, we're not saying that what we are saying is true just because we are saying it. It's we're trying to back up all the ideas with facts, with measurable facts, or at least with philosophical ideas that have been tried and proven to have a positive effect on the long run.
Yeah.
I was saying we were rambling because it seemed we were going on so many tangents, but what I had in mind all this time is the idea that there are so many people saying, they're out there in the public sphere, saying some ideas, and I mean some because they think it's some, but basically it's all the ideas they hate should not be heard. And we've seen this. You mentioned Jordan Peterson. We've seen that happening in his case with the Bill C-16. Was it the idea of, we're not only not allowing you to have your own ideas, we're compelling you to have our ideas.
Yeah.
And let's get back to our days. In the recent days, I've seen this happen time and time again around the case of Tucker Carlson's interview in Russia with
Yeah.
Putin. And it was really, really sad to see how many people jump to the conclusion that just because we do not like the guy he's interviewing, and when I say we do not like, I say we, us included. But not only we do not like, I personally written over the years many very clear accusations about what this guy is doing and his motivation, his background, everything. But this whole idea that just because we do not like that guy, nobody should not only hear him, not even interview him. We're not having conversations with Hitler. This is what we're being told. And this frightens me because that means we have people around us that have reached the conclusion we are the holders, we are the owners of the supreme truth. They are acting in a way in which they are saying whatever we believe to be wrong, should not be discussed. And I think this is something that affects us profoundly, because time and time again we've had people tuning in or writing in comments or sparring with us on social media, telling us we should shut up. Why? Because they do not like our ideas, and when they cannot silence us because they do not have the means, not that they are not trying, they end up trying to smear us, not the ideas we're putting out there.
Yeah.
And I think this conversation of ours is basically an exercise in freedom, and we encourage everyone that is listening to us to come up and debate our ideas, come up and bring arguments, come up and say, okay, I do not like what you're saying, but I'm willing to listen to you. I'm willing to build a proper rebuttal based on evidence and arguments. And as long as we do that, I hope we end up building the future on better ideas, ideas that have been discussed, ideas that have been tried, not ideas that have been shunned just to make a path for the chosen truth, what we have deemed the truth to be based on our choices, our desires.
Uh, well, the problem is that these people, because there's many, I think there's many categories of people involved. But I think we could distinguish two types of people. So it's one type of people who are hell-bent on denigrating anyone and everyone that does not align 100% to their agenda, whatever that agenda may be. We're not going to discuss that. There is clearly an agenda behind. And then there is the other type of people who, because you mentioned jumping to conclusions, but even jumping to conclusions presupposes some facts. All right, since jumping is involved, most of those facts are going to be jumped over. But there is going to be, you assume, even again, even when you say jumping to a conclusion, you at least have a premise, and maybe one or two intermediate facts or ideas. But no, this is not a cognitive process for a lot of people. This is a purely emotional process, and this is something that's it's something that it comes. I don't think it comes natural to us. I think it has been educated into us by the educational system and by the actual culture, because it's a deeply socialistic way of looking at things, where you appeal to emotions instead of appealing to facts and arguments. And the result is that you won't have people that are able to deal with their emotions regarding a certain topic, and at the same time have a cool head and try to analyze that topic rationally, because there are a lot of situations where you might feel emotionally aggrieved. You might like in the case of Putin, for instance. Okay, he is a dictator. He's a strong man. He has attacked Ukraine. He has probably ordered the murder of a number of people, dissidents, journalists, politicians, whatever. So the first stage when you hear about a guy like that or any other guy like that, the first reaction is obviously emotional, because we have our emotions, which are supposed to give us a very an instantaneous reaction to something. That's their I think that's their main goal. It's to signal something to you. That something it's interesting, it's good, it's bad, it's whatever. But then once you're past that level, once the emotions have signaled something to you, you must set the emotions aside and look at the facts, and look and be able to emit a judgment without being emotional. That's why I insist so much on people learning to think legally, where, say for instance, you might be a judge or a lawyer or a juror, and you're then required to come up with a judgment that is not emotional, that's not grounded in your emotions. Obviously you're not going to completely ignore emotions. Again, they're there to guide you. They're in my view, they're a mechanism of our conscience. But then at the same time, you when you apply the law, when you think in terms of law, you have to be rational, and you have to have arguments. You have to be able to go even against the grain of your emotions. And about Tucker Carlson specifically, I heard a lot of
Let me
people.
interrupt you. Let me interrupt you here and say that this is one of the things. There's a big difference between the Romanian legal system and the American one, and that's the juror system. And I know Americans in general loathe the idea of receiving in the mail a court summon, a jury duty, and it has become a symbol of the state interfering with our life, because we're gonna end up in court for God knows how many days.
I mean,
But
that's one of the best interferences of the state. That's one of the most
exactly,
legitimate interferences of the
exactly.
state, in my
And
view.
because when you get to be on jury duty, we're not in the position, we don't have jury duty in Romania. But imagine being on jury duty. The first thought that you should have is that maybe one day you'll be on the uh, in court, being a defendant, and you want um, a jury of your peers deciding, not some bureaucrat or some biased judge or some just we know how farcical the trials can become when the power of deciding upon a case lies in the hands of very few. And
Yeah, I
even
mean,
though we do not have, yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
this is what you're
but
getting now, where you have Guy Verhofstadt, one of the most prominent EU bureaucrats, asking for a travel ban on Tucker Carlson. And this ties into another thing. I was having a discussion with someone on Twitter about this, and they said, well, yeah, that freedom of speech does not apply to Tucker Carlson, because he's supposedly aiding and abetting a dictator. Uh, and then that person also mentioned that we in the West, we cherish the rule of law, and I agree with that. But if we do agree with the rule of law, doesn't that mean that we cannot just uh, pass an ad hoc judgment on Tucker Carlson? Neither me, you, Guy Verhofstadt, or whoever else. And that if people are accusing them, I mean, obviously, if to some extent, yeah, whatever, you could say impose a travel ban on you. I don't care. But if you're talking about,
oh, they should do it. They should do it because they would show their true face.
oh
This
yeah,
idea that banning a journalist And again, I've seen people saying he's not a journalist because they don't like him, so therefore he cannot qualify for being a journalist. The idea that journalists are only the people that speak our mind. They should ban him because that would show they consider speech as being violence. They would consider speech as being a war crime.
Yeah, I
And
mean that's a problem. If you obviously freedom of speech does have its limits, which in my opinion should be extremely extensive. But if you consider, if you believe, if you have a reasonable belief about someone that their speech may actually produce actual damage, then doesn't it follow logically that there must be a due process going on? That person must be, put before a court of law, wherever that court of law may be, since he's an American citizen in the States, and so he can present his case, so he can defend his case, so that the prosecution can prosecute him properly. I mean, if we are talking so much about the rule of law, let's just apply it. Let's just not decide in the Twitter tribunal that said person is guilty and therefore X or Y thing should happen to them, because
well,
otherwise
not
we're just
not Twitter tribunal, because the Twitter tribunals, ex tribunals, have been deemed as unworthy of speaking the truth just because too many people speak the truth. Um,
yeah.
if you
and
speak
and,
it
and
on
this
Twitter, yeah.
goes to basically these guys, the European Union, and anyone actually being agreeing with that, with the idea that Tucker Carlson should be banned or gagged or whatever. What they're doing is playing directly into Putin's hand, because when you do this, when you censor someone, everyone is logically going to answer, why are you not letting that guy speak? What do you have to hide? So what you're going to do as a European body or a television or a newspaper, when you are going to censor that, what you are going to do, you are going to feed into the paranoia of other people, and they're most likely going to be right. That's the problem. Because and then when Putin comes along and when you accuse Russia of being censorious, which they are, they're gonna say, yeah, but you guys are doing the same thing. And this is not about whataboutism. They're gonna for a lot of people, it's gonna sound like, yeah, they're right. How dare you judge them when you're applying the same principles? Now, again, if Tucker Carlson or anyone else for that matter, if there is a due process, and that a court of law decides that that guy, that man or woman, is proven to act in the interest of a enemy nation, so to speak, or an enemy state. I wouldn't say enemy nation, because I don't think that the Russians as a nation are anyone's enemies. So this is, I think of them as Russian state. Then yeah, do whatever it's needed with them, as you do with spies. That's why we have different names. That's for these things. There's a spy, there's a collaborator, there's a journalist. And the law has to decide, okay, whether these guys, whoever they are guilty of whatever they're being accused of. Obviously, you can form an opinion. You can have a strong opinion about someone, and you can be right about that. But between the opinion and having legal action taken against a person, there is a really, 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 really big gap. And let's make something clear. I'm not a fan of Tucker Carlson. I think he has charisma. He's funny sometimes. I think that on the matter of U.S. involvement, international involvement, and Russia, I think he literally doesn't know what he's talking about. At least like maybe 85%, 90% of the time. I think I think he generally he was red pilled in a way. And now he's kind of rushing into things without actually thinking too much, because a lot of things that he's saying, they're just absolutely ridiculous. They just for anyone that has a bit of historical knowledge, especially for us in Eastern Europe, and again, he has no idea why America should get involved, as I don't think he has an idea of why America shouldn't get involved sometimes. So it's again, and I was looking on Twitter, and all these people they're waiting for this Putin interview like the second coming of Jesus. I think it's gonna be a flop. Obviously, in a flop, not in terms of views. It's obviously going to get a lot of views, but in and of itself, I think it's going to be a nothing burger. I mean, Putin will say whatever he always says, and there is this group of people that expect these huge revelations to come from Putin. They're not going to come, and none of that is going to come from Putin. He has his things. He has the buttons he wants to push, and he's going to push them one way or the other. The problem is that when our own people, our own institutions are pushing those buttons inadvertently, because they think that they're or at least I think they do. They think that they're doing a good thing, that they are protecting democracy or liberty or whatever. When instead they're acting in a censorious manner, while they should not. What they should do is just let the guy speak, let the guy go there, take his interview, let him broadcast that interview, and let people notice that he's full of shit. That's all that they have to do. And the problem is that by not doing this, what they indicate is that they actually treat most of their populations like complete idiots. That is their outlook on the population. These are idiots that are not able to process information unless we give them that information. When we give them the information, they're smart enough to get it. But if the information is coming from someone else, they're not smart enough to get it. So when you draw the line, what this comes to is to a preposterous attitude of bureaucrats, politicians, journalists towards the very people they're supposed to serve.
Well, you mentioned Guy Verhofstadt earlier, and I think it's telling that this guy is encouraging. No, it's actually demanding, because that's his tone most of the times when he speaks. He demands Tucker Carlson be removed from Europe, or not be allowed to be on a no-fly zone, or boycott him, or censor him. It's interesting because this is the guy that has the same attitude on whatever topic he disagrees with. We remember the way he treated Brexit, the idea that if the British people want out, they should not be allowed to vote. If British people,
or if they do, they should be. If they do, they vote and exit, they should be punished accordingly.
Yeah. So this is where we differ. I think the European Union is entitled to punish Britain as severely as they want. It's their toy. It's their because it's their toy. It's their scepter of power. They are allowed to enact whatever policies they want with regards to Britain.
Well, I don't think so. That's the thing. It's a treaty. It's a contract. It's something that you should be. And if you ask people, if you ask people that are very in love with this concept of the European Union, they say, yeah, everyone can leave whenever they want. There's not going to be any penalty for that. But in fact, there is. That's the problem. You should be able, any treaty, any contract, you should be able to get out of it whenever you feel that arrangement is not. Is not beneficial.
It's not working for you. Yeah, but I agree. What I am saying is the European Union can decide that the way they want to treat Britain or whomever, it can be as aggressive as they want it to be. They can
Well, yeah,
change the contract.
of course they can, but it's a bad decision. It's a
Oh yeah, of
immoral
course,
decision.
and yeah, that's the whole point. Let
I mean,
them do
legally
it.
speaking, of course they can. I mean, they never actually said they never. There is like a
No,
punishing.
you said that Guy Verhofstadt said that the British people should be punished. Let them show their true face. Let them show that European Union is the European Union in its current installment, in its current shape, is a very undemocratic body. Let's show how authoritarian they are once they do not get things the way they want them to be. Because this should tell the European peoples how the European Union, the bureaucrats view them. We give you freedoms as long as you want the freedoms we want for you. The
Yeah,
moment you ask something else, the moment you decide to interview somebody that we do not like, the moment you exercise your option of not spending billions and billions and trillions on endless wars, that moment you're not allowed to exist. Your
yeah,
freedom
and
ends whenever you decide
you
something
know
we do not like.
the problem I'm having with this is that right now they're all up in arms yelling about Tucker Carlson, but for years they have been welcoming Putin at their meetings, and it's not like they didn't know.
Oh
All
yeah,
these
oh yeah.
all these things that all the dying journalists and the invasion of Georgia and the first invasion of Ukraine and Chechnya and whatever. All this happened, and still Putin was, they're taking photos with him. They're happily drinking champagne with him. So
And not only with him, not only
it's
with
a double
him.
standard. So and the problem is that I think one of the problem is that, again, the situation that Europe finds itself right now, where it's contemplating the possibility of a Russian invasion past Ukraine into NATO territory, is because they let their guard down. Although they knew about the potential danger, they knew that they had to treat with Russia in a certain way. So, and again, with Russia as a state, so that it just stays in its lane and it doesn't bother anyone. They knew this. They knew this since at least, and I said this recently, at least since 1946. Okay, when George Kennan wrote the lengthy letter back to Washington, I think, about this, about how Russians think, about how Russia should be approached. Everybody, they knew this for decades. They knew this when they founded NATO, and that whenever you're dealing with the Russian state, you have to always have that big stick with you, to talk softly and have the big stick with you, and not have to use it just because you have it around. And they dropped that stick. They dropped that stick for decades, and now they're accusing everyone that they're not brandishing their sticks and when it was their job, especially to make sure that they exercise the right amount of diplomacy and show force to manage this relationship.
I'm going back to where you were saying about the big stick. I am a firm believer that we should make a clear distinctions between having a big stick and using it, because a big stick that you constantly use might end up becoming a very blunt and useless object.
Yeah,
And I think we've seen these over the past 20 years, and this is one of the things I personally have evolved on, which I have personally evolved a lot over the past 2 decades. This whole idea that the moment we have the chance to use our stick, we should take it, is very dangerous, because this whole idea of military funding, uh, unlimited power, does not exist. We're not in a game where we just hack the account and we have more gold that we can spend. We should be wise about how we spend in order to avoid spending more, in order to avoid getting engaged in more conflicts. And this whole idea that because we did not spend enough money to deter Russia from attacking Ukraine, now is the time to spend all the money in order to make sure that what is the end goal? I want to hear clearly from people saying we should send more money, and I think we can move on to the topic of what's happening in the U.S. Congress, where
Yeah.
Republicans and this whole idea that we should send. And Guy Verhofstadt, of course, he had a lot of things to say about how if Trump comes around, there won't be enough money for Ukraine. This whole idea that we should send all the money in the world now doesn't solve the problem, or it can solve it for, I don't know. It had pushed the war in. It's almost, yeah, we're going to be in the third year of war in a few weeks.
Yeah, and I mean the problem is that, and I've seen some European politicians making statements such as this, such as, "Yeah, we're in this together, whatever it takes for whatever it takes." And the problem is that, rationally speaking, pragmatically speaking, we will not be into this. We cannot be as Europeans. If this drags on indefinitely, we don't have indefinite resources, and the problem is that what they're doing is dealing fake promises to the Ukrainian people.
Yep.
Meaning,
And
yeah, you guys keep fighting. You guys keep fighting. We're gonna have your back till kingdom come. When they know they'll not be able to do that. So this is, and hopefully, this conflict will resolve in Ukraine's favor as soon as possible. But the problem is that when you say, yeah, you just keep fighting, we're just gonna keep sending you money. You just keep fighting. We're gonna have your back forever. And we know from past alliances, from past wars, that this having our back forever thing, it's not really a thing.
yeah,
It's basically at the very least, is an empty promise that will mislead everyone involved. Okay, and I think, again, this is bad not only for us, because we're promising resources that frankly we do not have. The European Union is in a bad place right now, economically speaking, and with the idiotic policies being pushed around, I don't think there's we're gonna see like a European lion roaring and pushing everyone with our stellar economy. So this is obviously not going to happen. But more than that, we're okay. We have a peace. It's easy for us to talk. But the problem is that you're literally making promises that you cannot keep, and I think this is just absolutely insane to just come around and make all these public statements that in your hearts of hearts, as a European politicians, you're not going to be able to back up.
This is an interesting thing, the point of making promises. And what we've seen from politicians is this whole idea that we promise you we will deliver results, very, very, very vague results, as long as you give us more power and more money. And on the point of promises made to Ukraine, and this is such a sad story, because a lot of the hardship of we're being told that the lack of support from European Union and the United States has prolonged this war. Had they received a few more billions here and there, they would have won the war a long time ago.
Yeah,
there is no proof for that. On the other hand, there is concrete proof that with all the money and the equipment that has been sent to these guys over the past few years, nothing changed. And I was looking at the figures, because I said that I evolved a lot on the topic of wars, especially in 2001, after the 9/11 attacks. Bush promised to get rid of the Taliban. And 20 plus years later, the Taliban's are back. So basically, America was in a war for 20 plus years just to have the same result after it. And Afghanistan is in no way, shape, or form in a better place now than it
Yeah,
was.
yeah. And
And
neither is and
and
neither is the rest of the world or America for that matter.
oh yes, and but the problem is that over these years, on the topic of sending more money to Ukraine to solve the problem of war, is that America spent 2.3 trillion dollars on that war alone. We're not talking about the Iraq war,
Yeah,
and they spent 2.3 trillion dollars over 20 years just to make sure they have the same guys in power, and
yeah.
Afghanistan is in a worse place
No, and
than.
it's just this stupid mentality of this stupid socialist mentality that if you just keep showering things with problems with money, problems will just go away.
Yeah.
And we've seen this. They've done this with Afghanistan. They've done this in a different way with China, uh, and they've been doing this for the last 60 years with the infamous war on poverty, which has it was 21 trillion back in 2020. I think right now it's probably north of 25 trillion. Only 25 trillion dollars on the war of poverty started by the equally infamous Lyndon Johnson. And well, guess what? There are still poor people in the United States. Poor people in the United States that are obviously way better to do than most poor people in any other places. But the thing is that they really spent at least 23 trillion dollars
Oh,
on nothing.
those are the figures from 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, I'm just being conservative here, pun intended. I mean, at this stage, whether it's 23 or 25, who gives a heck? Anyway, it's just I can't even count to 23 trillion. It's a humongous amount of money that just didn't produce any results, and this is just one of the many black holes, where they just kept throwing money, because again, the mentality of these people is that you throw money at a problem, other people's money, mind you, not your own money, other people's money, and that problem goes away. No, what you're going to do, you're going to create more problems. You're going to create a number of clients that are going to start feeding into that problem, and they're even going to maintain or help maintain the problem, because if the problem is gone, their money is gone. So this is bad in so many ways, and it's strange to me that we have to have these conversations right now when we have so much experience with this. We already tried all of this. We have experience with throwing money at problems. We have experience, hundreds, if not thousands of years of experience with war, and still we keep doing the same mistakes. We keep all the mistakes that are in the book there.
Are they mistakes though? That's the whole point.
Well, that's the question. I mean, no. Look, I'm pretty sure that some people who, are literally think not, and maybe not amongst the decision makers, but I think there's a lot of people that, let's say, in a regular population, that really think that this is the solution. Why? Because they have been taught that this is the solution. They have been told for years that this is the solution. The states have it controlled. They have it handled. They just have to. You just pay your taxes. We got this. That's the problem. But obviously, there is a category of decision makers that I don't think they don't know what they're doing is wrong. There is no way in hell, because again, all of this is documented, including this thing of the mission creep, where you prosecute a war and keep adding objectives, keep moving objectives around, and then you don't have a political unity behind that war, and then your generals don't know what to do, and then they don't know what orders to give away, and then, well, everything goes to hell. Look at the Vietnam War and many other wars, actually.
Exactly. And when the result keeps coming out the same, the audacity of saying we're going to do the same, trust us, this time it will work, is, I mean, in a way, it shows how gullible the public is. And I want to change a bit the topic, because
Sure.
we're gonna we can talk on this whole idea of war a lot. Um, you said you
Just
mentioned there.
let me
Yeah.
interrupt you here, guys. Whoever is live with us, if you wanna ask a question or contribute some to the conversation, feel free to do that in comments. We could also bring you live with us if you want, and you can. Invitation is open, including for those that do not agree with us. So feel free to comment now or later. You're just welcome to join the conversation at any time.
Let's have a conversation. Let's have a heated conversation, because I want to contradict. I want to pick a fight with you on something you said earlier. And
Okay, bring it on.
yeah, you said you don't like Tucker Carlson, and just as I was mentioning on social media a few days ago, I'm not a big fan of Tucker Carlson. I never posted any of his videos. I never shared any of his content. I'm not the kind of guy that looks in the mouth of somebody and be like, oh wow, whatever he said is brilliant. I don't need to think on topic and do my own research on the topic. But you said that he has no idea what he's talking about when he talks about the war. And
Yeah, I
I
don't
want
think he
to.
does. At least not from a sorry, not just to clarify my position. I
Please
think
do.
he does. I think he does have an idea when he's talking in relation to the American people, to some extent.
Mhm.
I don't think. I don't think he understands the historical role the United States has in the world, and because he keeps repeating this same thing where he's being an extreme isolationist in a way, where he says, "Yeah, we shouldn't be getting involved anywhere," uh, and I think he's wrong.
Monroe all the way.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, wait. I mean, wait a minute. Not even a moral doctrine. If I go back to it, um, well, that one really speaks mostly about the obviously it speaks about the Americans wanting to keep to themselves,
Yeah.
and but I think that even back then, the Americans knew that there is going to be some involvement needed. They obviously, well, had no way of knowing that the level of involvement they'll have to get into in the future history, so to speak. Um, but yeah, I mean, Tucker he just thinks that Americans could just keep to themselves, and that's it. That'll be, and that was true up until maybe probably until Theodore Roosevelt paraded a white fleet around the world. We just talked about this, I think, last time. But uh, once you have that, once you have the this global thing where information, rockets, everything travels so fast, there is no way you're going to be just you alone in your corner of the world without being without being a target. So, and this also goes to some people. I've heard a lot of people lately talking about Europe has to find a way to manage by itself all its security situations and whatever. This is not going to happen. There is no way. There is no way. Europe is able to maintain its own, at least at the moment, and probably for the foreseeable future. There is no way for Europe to stand alone, in the face of any major threat like Russia or China. So America has to be there. This is a crazy idea, okay, and a
Yeah, but
dangerous
America
idea
has
at
to
that.
be America has to be there only and only if Europe is there. And we've
Yeah,
seen
obviously.
over the past few decades, the European Union, especially, saying, "Oh," and Germany and France and all the major countries of Europe saying, "Oh, America has our back. We can focus on ruining our economy with ideologies that drive the economy in the ground." And I don't know if you're familiar with the Marines hymn, the marching
Yeah,
song of
I
the
am. I am.
Marines. Yeah, if you recall, the lyrics say, "We fight our country's battle." Yeah,
Yeah.
our country's battle, and
Although it does involve the country, the battle does involve the shores of Tripoli. Yeah. Okay. So
oh yeah, yeah. And this idea that the Americans do not get involved unless somebody attacks them is something that shows uh, America's interest is beyond its borders. But that's the interest. The country itself
yeah,
has its own interest that do not always have to align with somebody else's interest. And this whole idea that the European Union can say we're not going to fight our battles because America fights them for us, but America cannot say we'll stop fighting your battles because you're not fighting your own battles, makes it very hard. And going back to what I was saying, I want to contradict you. Tucker Carlson does not speak for the world. Tucker Carlson is a populist, and I do not like populists
yeah,
of any sort. Yeah, this is the one of the reasons I do not, in any way, shape, or form, like the public appearances of the people from the Our Party. It reeks of populism, but that's
yeah,
just one side of it. I do not like Tucker Carlson because of his populism. But again, you have to remember he speaks to the American people. And the American people are currently being told that their priority, their number one priority, should be the war in Ukraine. And that works when you have a functioning economy, when you have a country that has very little other problems, like they had in the 90s. Yeah, America in the 90s was on a good run after the Reaganomics
yeah,
worked, after the 80s, after the fall of the Soviet Union and the warming of the Cold War, or let's say on the melting of the Cold War. But we are in 2024. We are in a year coming after a long, long recession. We are coming after a pandemic that has drained the energy and the bank accounts of most Americans. And here you have Tucker Carlson saying, I am going to show the American people that this is not our war. Why is he doing that? I don't know. I'm not in his head. I am not. I'm not going to parrot what he says
yeah,
as being his reasons. But I know for a fact that the American people want to hear what is happening to them. And I keep reading online posts from people saying he shouldn't have done this interview because we already know what Putin thinks. Maybe the American people do not know what Putin thinks. Maybe the American people, through hearing how evil Putin is, will say, oh, wait a second, maybe we should send more money to Ukraine. But the
yeah,
American people need to see why every conversation surrounding their life, with regards to their life, has to start with how much money we send to somebody else. And I want to
yeah,
move to the topic of the negotiations in the Congress between um, um,
yeah.
Democrats and the Republicans. If you ask any American what's their number one problem today, what will the answer be? What would you say the answer is?
Well, I think economy. That would be
Well,
my first guess. I mean, it's the economy, stupid. You know, the old adage. You know?
yeah,
uh, so yeah, I would say I mean, and by the economy, I mean even looking at the problem from a more socialistic perspective, as probably some Americans do, where maybe they want more, more social security, more, better insurances or whatever. But I think the economy should be. It's probably there for their main concern.
well, Gallup has a poll every month that it's a barometer of how the American perceives their problem. And in January, so last month, the number one problem was high cost of living and inflation, and that accounted for 34% of all the answers, economic problem. On the other hand, non-economic problems, the government, poor leadership, immigration, unifying the country, poverty, hunger, homelessness.
Yeah.
Where do you see on this list the war with Russia? In fact, you have the war in the Middle East representing a problem for 1% of the population. You have the situation in China, 1% of the population. Situation with Russia, 1% of the population. And I'm gonna post the results here. So if you have the American people saying, "Hey, our problems are economy, poverty, poor leadership, immigration," yet you have the government always talking about sending more money to other people. How do you expect a journalist that is populist not to say, "I'm going to make sure the public hears why are we sending money there"? How do you expect a journalist to be that? I assume Tucker Carlson, just like any other journalist, wants ratings, and he has them.
Yeah.
To the chagrin of many of his detractors. Yeah. How do you expect him to not have the conversation centered, focused on what the Americans want, not on American interventionism, somewhere else?
Well,
This
I
is
mean, the popular reply to this, and to some extent I mean, it can be a legitimate reply, is that, well, the Americans don't understand the ramifications of you know, far conflicts into the well-being of their, into their own well-being, uh, which is true. People generally are self-centered.
Americans or all people in general.
Yeah, no,
Do,
all people. That's what I'm saying. But I mean, the Americans might have maybe a stronger sentiment in that regard, because they're far away from everyone else. They have a strong military, so maybe they'd be less interested in whatever any other country does than we would be, or Poland, or Latvia, or whatever. So, but again, this is just it's their circumstance. It's not. I'm not blaming them on anything. God forbid.
well, I beg to differ. I think the American people are war weary on so many levels. After the war in Afghanistan, after the war on ISIS, after the
Right.
war in Iraq, after the war in Kuwait. So you had 30 years of almost continuous war. And you had the war in Libya, and you had the Syrian civil war that required their attention. Now we have the ramping up of the conflict in with Iran and the Houthis in
Yeah.
Yemen. And there is a war weariness that stems from this whole idea that the Americans should not focus solely on their life. And we human beings are we are selfish creatures. And you were mentioning earlier about how we tend to rely on fallacies. That's our adaptive bias. We want to protect ourselves, and then we will rely on adaptive irrationality instead of relying on truthfulness and rationality. Why is that? Because we are selfish. But after 30 years of involvement in all these conflicts, after another 45 years of Cold War, you cannot expect the American people confronted with increasing poverty, with inflation, with debt. There are a lot of analysts, economic analysts, saying America continues to spend, therefore there is no economic problem. The fact that the Americans got to the point where they spend so much out of the bank's money, not their own money, doesn't mean that there isn't a problem.
Yeah.
It means that the American are saying, should we focus more on our problems than somebody else's problems? And I agree, being on the outside, being in Romania, being bordering Russia, or the prospect of bordering Russia is frightening. But how can we expect somebody from Kansas or somebody from I don't know Montana to have the same attitude towards war after? Um,
Yeah.
uh,
Look, it's
Imagine.
okay. I mean, morally speaking, I don't see a problem with expecting that, although it might be naive to expect that. What I see a problem with, and with this, we'll probably go deeper into the problem with the Congress that we're going to discuss, is this entitlement that you see, especially in European leaders, that in some European leaders and journalists and whatever, who called the Republicans, let alone that the problem is way more intricate than they make it. They try to make it. They call them traitors. And my question is, traitors to whom? Is this a thing where Europeans, and especially not again, I don't mean European citizens, although to some extent it applies to us as well. But
Oh,
European politicians,
let me show you something. Let me. Oh no,
it got
just
into their head that they're entitled to being defended by American soldiers with American money, and that they should just lay on their backs, just shirk on their duties, just not invest enough money in their budgets. Okay, and then whatever, you Americans come deal with our problem. I mean, it's your job to do this. We're entitled, and if you don't come to our aid whenever we demand it and under the conditions that we demand, okay, then you're a traitor to us. What the hell? I mean, it's the level of insanity and like this is Kafkaesque level of absurdity.
let me put something on the screen for our viewers, and I'll probably end up having a post on this, the audacity of this guy, because it's not only entitlement, it goes beyond that. It's like, again, I was saying earlier, it's dictatorship. You have to do it the way we say it, otherwise we're going to force you. And it's let me put this because it's so telling. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Oh man, this guy again. What?
Yeah, from 2 days ago. If Trump's traitors, yeah, you are traitors, won't help democratic Ukraine anymore, it's time European Union acts. No, the time for acting was 20 years ago.
Yeah. And 20 years ago and every time since, every time since 20 years ago. Okay, when these guys should have, instead of throwing their money at immigrants at stupid socialistic policies, they should have strengthened our their contributions to NATO. Okay, instead of insane dreams about the so-called European army, which is it's an idiotic concept, not to mention dangerous. Okay, they just get, when these guys were just happy to take Putin's energy and gas and meet him at parties and whatever other meetings they had. So yeah, and now the Trump's traitors. I mean, what this is. When it's I'm speechless. When did any of those? When did Trump, who again does not hold any office at the moment? Okay, he does have influence, but he doesn't have he doesn't hold office. Okay,
and the entirety of the conflict has been under the Biden administration.
Yeah,
they held the majority in the House, they held the Senate, they held the presidency. Where is the admission of failure? Is there a problem in Ukraine? It's your failure. If you failed, it's you who failed. Don't blame it on somebody else. Unless you want to make sure everybody knows that the real problem is you wanting to hold power, not really to help Ukraine.
Yeah. No, and this absurd notion, I'm appalled that nobody in the European establishment calls this guy on this bullshit, because the people in the GOP, no matter their allegiance, their whatever sins they may have, whatever they're perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But when those guys got in Congress, they swore allegiance to the United States and the Constitution. Okay, not to anyone else. They cannot be. How can you call them traitors?
Well, we have already established that unless you do what they want, you're a traitor and you deserve to be imprisoned, or removed from office. And it says there, remove Orban's veto. You do not play by our rules. Rules that say you are entitled to veto, then we will change the rules.
And it's interesting that you see here how this Verhofstadt guy, it just basically exploits this nothing burger, basically, to drive home some of his things that he keeps trying to drive home in whenever he has the option, whenever he has, there's bad weather outside and there is rain, and he gets his shoes wet, and he says, "Oh, by the way, and we have to remove Orban's veto." And the accent here is not on Orban, actually. It's on veto. His problem, and the problem of other guys like him in the European Union, is not necessarily with Orban. Okay, he's just one of the manifestations of this. The problem they have with the right of countries to veto some of the measures. So that's the problem. So he just sneaks in. He talks about the traitors in the GOP, and then he's sneak this veto thing. You know what I mean? While we call those guys traitors, why not also talk about this veto thing that I've been talking for 20 years now?
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, and it's mind-boggling that there are people out there pretending these guys are have the best interest of the European people in mind, not their power. Yeah. Trump-proofing of European security. That's what Trump said. He literally said, "If you're not doing your part, I'm going to be out." And now he's saying, "Yeah, we're going to kick Trump out of this whole thing."
Yeah,
perfectly. Does that mean we're going to have better defenses in Europe? Does that mean that we're not going to rely on Russia for cheap energy, and we're not going to cripple our energy system for the sake of bureaucrats?
Obviously, because every citizen will be given a free like a free windmill to just keep the wind spinning, and everyone will have endless energy in their homes, and will show that guy Putin.
This is Joe. Going back on the Congress discussion, there was a vote the other day on the bill on sending more money to Ukraine, and that bill was unfortunately tied to the bill with regards to the border, to the southern border and immigration. And it is frightening to see that the American people, and I'm talking about the entire of America, not only Republicans who are concerned about immigration, all the American people are in the position where every single thing has to be tied to an external issue. Are we discussing about our medical system? Yes, but first we need to discuss about immigration. Are we discussing about closing the border? Yes, but we first have to discuss the money sent to Ukraine.
Yeah,
and that shows, to me at least, that the priority is not solving the issues at hand. The problem is driving the agenda. And if the agenda includes something that does not concern the American people, we'll pretend it does. And unfortunately, this episode in Congress, where you had the Republicans saying we're not going to vote sending money to Ukraine unless you vote for the border, and the vote for the border failed, yet the money to Ukraine is being sent, shows that the American people do not really have an ally in the Congress anymore. And these are no small words. These are no small words.
And it's on the Republicans as in almost as much as it is on the Democrats. And this is the other lie that was peddled these days, that Trump blocked the aid to Ukraine. And this is a lie. What he said, what he literally said, was that the Republicans should avoid tying one law, one bill to another. Why? Because obviously the deal was bad on one hand, and on the other hand, you are encouraging a very, very bad legislative practice where you at one point or another, you expose yourself to being blackmailed. So if you want to pass a bill that is in a genuine way useful for the people, okay, the other side will come along and say, yeah, well, if you want to pass this good bill, well, you have to pass this bad bill as well. And this is it's a self-defeating tactic. If you keep doing this, and this has happened in parliaments all over the world, okay, when you try to do something good, but you know that you won't be able to do that something good if you also don't do something bad that the other team wants. And what you're going to do is you are going to encourage this, instead of encouraging actual debate and actual, making members of the legislative accountable for their decisions. What you're doing is you're switching that process, that what should be a sane legislative process, and you're changing it for a bargaining process that it's way beyond any sort of.
Yeah, but bargaining means there is a different interest. When I bargain, I want to get what's most important for me.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. And when people are saying we have to bargain for your right to be secure at the southern border, for what are the Democrats asking? What are they bargaining for?
Which is gonna, mind you, so basically what they're saying in essence is, we will allow you to spend a lot of money on the border, which is necessary, if at the same time you agree to spend even more money on something else. And for all this money, it's the American taxpayers are the ones who are supposed to pay this money. That is the problem. That is the problem here.
It's it's like the wolf and the fox deciding where should they start eating the chicken.
Yeah, I mean, it's
the whole
really,
argument being,
we are literally seeing in real time the how dysfunctional democracies really are. I mean, and the concept of democracy as it has been sold to us in the last 200 years. It's because you hear this all these do-gooders always talking about democracy. The key factor in their speech is democracy. You have to save the democracy, but the democracy they're having right now, okay, this is not the democracy that was envisioned by the Greeks. This is not the democracy that was envisioned by the founding fathers. No, this is a mechanism where what they did actually, they took power from one tyrant and they gave it to a few hundred tyrants. That's exactly what they did. And through this process, they're also killing the rule of law, and they replace it with the rule by law, namely their law. So right now, and this again, Madison, and not only him, Madison warned exactly about this, that the danger of dictatorship by parliament, where parliament gets so much power that it's so diffused, and the decisions are so diffused that you're not able, like in the case of dictators, like in the case of Putin, for instance, you're not able to single out that single problem, that single dictator that's being bad for the people and for everyone else, because you have, what do you know, 500 of them, or in your opinion, I don't know, 700 of them. And
it's interesting you mentioned Putin, because everybody's saying he's a dictator, and I personally believe he uses his powers, his tools properly to be a dictator and not a soft one. But it's interesting that we say he's a dictator, though he was elected, yet we do not accept the idea that our elected officials can form a dictatorship. It's only them that can have a dictatorship in spite of a democratic election, not on our side.
Yeah,
we cannot talk about a rigged election in the United States, but we're allowed to talk about a rigged election in Russia.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's this thing where it's taboo to criticize your own guys. And again, if we uh, are supposed to live in liberal democracies, we cannot think in terms of criticizing institutions as les majestés. I'm criticizing the European Union. No institution is beyond criticism. If you, if
Criticism is
you,
scrutiny. Scrutiny. This whole idea
yeah,
that we
yeah,
cannot
it's
scrutinize what.
accountability. It's account. How are you supposed to keep politicians accountable uh, if we're not allowed to criticize the institutions they man? And sometimes the institution may be actually okay in itself, but it may be perverted or at the very least inefficient or poorly managed by whoever is in charge. Again, I'm going back to what the first Secretary General of NATO's Lord Ismay, yeah, I think it was Lord or Baron, I don't know, and he did say this. Keep the Americans in, the Russians out, and Russia out, mind you, and and Germany down. And I think this is a very important nuance. I think the quote is correct, that he didn't actually meant the people. Then he didn't talk about the nation itself or the people in it. He talked about or you may say that, okay, maybe he talked the nation, or he conflated a little bit with the state, but he didn't mean the people. That's the thing. He meant the actual organization that is actually doing or it can potentially do damage.
You were mentioning earlier James Madison, and I read a piece of news that came out today in the Federalist, published by the Federalist,
Yeah.
regarding the vote in Michigan, where a group of people had started a long process of identifying who the voters are that are voting without really having the right to vote. And there's this group that went through the voter roll, the database of people allowed to vote and that have voted, and they matched them against the graveyards and the grave markers in cemeteries across Michigan, and they found out an impressive numbers of dead registered voters. And given the fact that a few months ago, if I'm correct, Michigan removed 177,000 votes from the voter roll, is very, very telling.
Yeah.
177,000. That's enough to win. I
Yeah,
think
that's
that was enough
significant.
to swing the vote for Biden in
Yeah.
Michigan. Yeah, and this whole idea that the electoral process cannot be rigged because we're talking about America comes to show we've gotten to the point where we're not willing to discuss reality. We're just willing to discuss our projections and argue just in favor of our projections. And this is frightening because it means not from now on, for the past few decades, I'd say, especially in the age of social media, when we're having so many conversations, we abdicated from reasoning. We're stepping into the arena of conversations without accepting the fact that we might be wrong. We need to have conversations in order to find out the truth. We're not there to just state what we think is true.
Yeah, and the problem is that the conversation has to be permanent. We have to it's
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
maintaining a healthy society is a full-time job, and not and it's a job that if the citizens are going to abandon, someone else is going to take it away from it and usually use it against them, or at the very least not necessarily in their favor. So if we abandon the again, maybe we're just too focused on what's happening on social media. Maybe, and I do think that most people are not that. I mean, the arguments that we've seen in the last years in the social media, uh, I think, or I hope at least, that they're outliers. That they're just some people that maybe they either have an agenda, or they got maybe too neurotic or even psychotic in a way. Um, so I still believe that when you all the other tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people that don't spend their that much time on arguing on social media, they might actually get it more or less right. I hope.
Well, again, I'm going to contradict you because I had a very short debate with somebody on the topic of Vivek Ramaswamy being a potential candidate for the Republicans. And I stated in that exchange that it's impossible for Vivek to succeed because he is not only popular, he's not visible enough. I think what's happening nowadays, and the fact that we might stare into the abyss for another election where the Americans have to choose between senile Biden, the guy that's mentioned in the past week that he had encounters with Francois Mitterrand, died.
Actually, it looks like he also said that he was in a flight with the late
Hel-
Helmut Kohl.
Helmut Kohl, yeah, yeah. So basically, he's already in his afterlife, speaking
Yeah.
from afterlife. And on the other side, you have a guy that is so divisive that even his own uh, party struggles to kick him out through whatever methods they have. And I think this is the result of social media populism and the way people are connected to the social media. And it seems to me that if you want 80 plus million votes nowadays, you have to employ every channel of communications ad nauseum. And I am afraid we need to be part of this conversation. We cannot say, "Oh, people do not spend time on social media."
Oh, no, no,
People,
no, no. Yeah, obviously, obviously the conversation must be had. I mean, it's not like it is there. It's not going to go away again. I don't think we. I do think that in some ways we have to return to uh, saner foundations of society. But on the other hand, there are things changing, and we can just uh, put our fingers in our ears and just hope everything is going to be for the best or the better. So obviously the conversation must be had. On the other hand, what I'm saying is that social media, as we already discussed and everybody knows, just brings a lot of vitriol out of everyone. And I do believe that in reality, even if on social media people may be again a little more vitriolic, I do believe that the general population is it's a little bit more laid back, just a little.
um, I think the noise is so loud in the media in general, not only in social media, that people that are tuning out are not only doing it because they want to keep their sanity, but they're also missing out on a lot of important information. And there is this thing where we have to admit that the freedom to speak on all these topics comes with the downside of other people being able to use the same platforms to create so much noise. The important stuff is not coming out. And we've seen this time and time again happening in recent years, where we're not discussing political programs and political actions. We're only discussing sound bites from a politician. We're not discussing what's happening in reality, what's going on with the economy in Romania, what's going on with the institutions, the public institutions, what's going on. Literally, if you go look, I went on Hot News. Yeah, it's the number one,
Yeah.
or I don't know, the second best source for news considered by Romanians. And if you look through the news, in what way can you say you're informed? in what way can you say we're having conversations about things that matter for us? Yeah.
Look, Zero is asking us in the comments if we ever considered trying to appeal to those that may have different views than ours. Uh, yeah, the floor was open since we started doing these things 3 years ago. The floor was always open, and it's always open in on social media with us. It's these people have to just come out and be willing to have a conversation, a civilized conversation. Wait,
Let me ask you again. Um,
yeah, go ahead. So
uh,
I'm being told I haven't read
yeah,
the.
he's saying we should not try to appeal to have conversations with people that have different views. We should not, may not have.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's
What do we try to achieve? That's the point. Zero. We're not trying to impose our views. We're not trying to build a society based on our views. We want the society to build itself on the rules, on the views that help it flourish.
no. Look, I mean, and there's also this. You don't know what most people actually think. It's not like I'm taking conversations or picking conversations or fights specifically with a certain kind of people. We're just talking in the ether here. Everyone can hear this. Everyone can make their own judgment. They can just decide to ignore us. They can decide to engage with us. It's their decision. It's not, again, it's not like we're doing a targeted discussion here. Jazz?
Sorry, I was on mute. There's
Okay.
a it's cold here, and I started the AC, and there's a big humming from the background. I wanted to avoid it. We're encouraging people to have conversations first and foremost with their own selves. I think people should do this experiment. The next 10 people you encounter, I don't care where, ask them what they want, what's their goal, and see how much of that goal, their goals, align with what's happening around them. Ask them, on the other hand, what's important in the news, and you'll see there is a big discrepancy between what people really care about and what they're talking about. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
talking so much. I was mentioning earlier the Gallup poll. We're talking so much about things that do not matter. Not that they are not important, but that they are not important to us. And unless we start having conversations with our own selves, deciding what's important for us, we'll always be trapped in somebody else's conversation. At least that's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key thing here is that, again, as we stated many times before, you must be able to talk. You must bring your ideas into, obviously, if you want, into the public sphere. Even when, or especially when other people don't want you to do that. It's and we see this today with this stupid movement against Tucker Carlson, which, again, in my opinion, plays right in the hands of Putin. So right here, right now, the ones enabling Putin are the one calling for Carson to be censored.
Yeah, if I were on the other side, I would say bring it on. Let everybody hear what a nut job he is.
Yeah, and
Easy as that.
that's the thing. You just let him speak, and everyone will see him, for who he really is. And yeah, they should be welcoming this. Even they could even have their views or their positions in relation to Carson confirmed. But no, this should be completely censored. So that's the thing. None of this makes sense. And I think that today, whenever something doesn't actually make sense, there should be, or anyone should have a modicum of suspicion for everything that is absurd, that doesn't make sense. Because again, political decisions should make sense. Journalists should make sense. All of this makes sense. If it doesn't, then it means that you're missing some piece of information, or you're being fed the wrong kind of information. And again, I think that that a bit of suspicion level would be welcome.
Well, suspicion. The Descartes quote, "Dubito ergo cogito," starts like that. I should doubt first. Having no doubts, having only certainties, being sure you have all the right answers, and you're in no need of conversation, because it's the first time you are in need of conversation.
Yeah, I think this is and with this I'll probably end here.
Well, I have one more topic I would like to.
Sure. But at least on this topic, is that, whenever you don't have doubts, it's obviously we all need, and there are things that are clear. There are situations that are clear. Okay? But if you don't have doubts about anything in relation to a subject, you should have doubts about not having doubts, basically.
Yeah. You were. I was mentioning the noise earlier, and we talked a few episodes ago, if I'm correct, about Taylor Swift, and I stated then that she is all the noise some people need, and if you look at the amount of attention she gets, and you imagine you're not really being duped into not following what's important, I'm really sorry for you. Doesn't mean you cannot listen to her music, but if you spend countless hours reading news about her and other celebrities, if your whole focus is on who wins the Super Bowl, if your focus is on what celebrity did and what new accusations come against the other celebrity, while not talking about what's really important to you, as per your decision, you're just proving how easy it is to be distracted. And I hear a lot of people saying here, the conversation about Taylor Swift being a psyop. Why is that impossible? And when I say psyop, I'm not pretending there is this very, very complex process in which some dudes in a room in a bunker think, okay, how should we distract these guys? It's just the media having the purpose of keeping people busy, amplifying what doesn't really matter. And again, I'm talking about music that is taken beyond the scope of its entertainment. The Romans had the saying, bread and circus. Bread and circus was a psyop of ancient Rome. Why can it not be a psyop of a society that has all the electronic means to spread the message to billions of people at once?
Yeah, obviously. And it shouldn't be even it's not even a theory. We know, media has been used and culture has been used for at least the last 100 years very effectively in swaying populations and in conveying certain messages. So it's everybody did it. Everybody, the Americans did it, the Russians did it, the Europeans did it. Obviously, I think that especially in terms of very obvious propaganda, probably the United States and the Soviet Union made the best use of it. That's probably because they were engaged in a Cold War. So, but this is not news. Obviously, this is going to be used by someone. If even if not directly. I mean, nobody's saying that Taylor Swift is a CIA asset or something, but that doesn't mean that the people that she moves through her music, and I'm not discussing the quality of her music here, that they cannot be made to move in a direction or another, especially if you convince a person with so much influence like Taylor Swift to take a more active political stance as we've seen her take.
Oh yeah, and I mean, we're in a society that wants to tell us music should be profound and have a cultural and political impact. On the other hand, whenever you say music is used for political purposes, everybody's like, "Oh no, wait, it's just here for the music." Yeah. The hippies of the 60s and 70s was a movement.
Yeah, I mean, even I'm just here for the gladiator fights again.
Oh yeah, exactly.
I'm just here to see the alliance stare at the Christians being taken out of the basement there.
I continue to say we're being distracted, and in the meantime, the real deals, the real issues are happening behind our backs. And I want to, because not Taylor. Oh man, I got duped myself by my own tunnel vision. So Taylor Swift was not a topic I wanted to discuss. I wanted to discuss something closer to home. Something that is happening in the European Union, and it is in a way very much connected to what we talked until now. I'm talking about the discourse Ms. von der Leyen had in the European Parliament, where she talked about the farmers, the protests of the farmers.
Yeah.
And she managed somehow to blame the problem on climate change and Russia. And
Okay.
if this doesn't tell you all this noise, all these things are a distraction that is preventing the people looking into the power grab in all these institutions, I don't know what to say. When this person that leads the European Union, the body that came up with such audacious legislations that practically kicked the farming industry, the agricultural sector to the ground, saying the problem is with climate change. The suffering is because of climate change. Is mind-boggling. I'll try to find her discourse.
Yeah, you do that. Anyway, I don't think especially now with the farmers' protests, I don't really think people are buying into the whole climate change thing. And by the people, I mean most of the people, especially now when we've seen the energy crisis we had since the Russia attacked Ukraine, and you've seen people abandoning electric cars, and I mean right now in Europe, electric cars already have a bad name. I mean, I think probably the only electric car that has a good name is Tesla.
And they're trying to smear that because it does not align anymore with their.
I think this is and this brings me to actually to a podcast on ESG that I listened recently of, or actually re-listened to, of James Lindsay's, and he actually mentioned this, that these people will switch the agendas at their convenience. Okay, what's now desirable. So if electric cars are today desirable, tomorrow they may not be as desirable if it fits their agenda. You might even see them starting to praise oil and to come back and say, yeah, no, we should keep extracting oil. Oil is actually good. So it has nothing to do with the actual truth. It has nothing to do with actual facts. All it has to do is with whatever agenda these guys have in mind, and And just to clarify, when I say these guys, when I say these people, when I say them, because we did start it about about this tribal thing. When I say them, I mean people who are in some way, shape, or form revolutionary. And when I say revolutionary, I mean in a Marxist way, and even dating back to the French Revolution. So, and they take different shapes and forms. They'll adapt. They will again they're manifest a little bit differently, maybe depending on where they are. But that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying them or they. Some of them may be just and I think that the cannon fodder of these people, the part that the cannon fodder, they really believe what they're doing. Okay, they really think that they're doing the right thing. And then there is the other category that is actually fueling the or fanning the revolution flame, so to speak. That and they know very well what they're doing. And again, they are going to switch their agenda they're going to switch whatever they support or they fight against based on whatever their agenda tells them to do.
Well, I think whoever wants to listen, whoever wants to have meaningful conversations, as I said, should have firstly and foremost have an introspection. And I think what we need now more than ever is conversations that talk about reality, conversations that ask questions. And unless we're willing to accept that somebody else is in charge of our life, we should continue to have these conversations.
Yeah. And on this topic, I have Zero again telling or asking us here, or maybe proposing to us that we use a more clickbaity tactic. And as much as I would like to see this channel grow very fast and have a blazing trail of growth, our aim was always to again encourage something that it's not clickbaity. It's something that is. I mean, obviously, we could do something that is inviting. That's why we're careful about how our visuals look, and we're trying to whenever possible have technical whatever we need technically to deliver a good broadcast. But we would really like people to listen to us, because we're taking our time to come up with some thoughtful perspectives, and we're trying to hopefully encourage and generate more thoughtful perspectives from other people listening to us. So this is the climate we're trying to promote. I know it might look self-defeating. I know it might look like, okay, we're doing a slow progress. So if you want to help us progress, get more people listening to us, get more people joining the conversation, get more people interested in having, again, genuine conversation that spreads good ideas, that and that fortifies this climate of the conversation that it's good for society.
Well, let me add something to it. What Zero is saying, we should find a way to lure people into listening to us. And to me, that's like saying, if I want my kid to eat broccoli, I should spike it with sugar because he only likes sweets.
Yeah.
If I believe the problem is sugar, if I believe the problem is frivolous conversations, a lot of noise, I am now willing to engage in such conversations, noise-inducing conversations. We have resorted in the past. Just a few episodes ago, we were having an honest conversations about how our podcast, how our conversation should be titled, and we actually were thinking about a clickbait title, and we decided we will not speak about that. We cannot be clickbait.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, there is, even here, there is a bit of a nuance. I mean, you can be, like, it's like oratory, you can, it's okay to embellish. It's okay to give it something, a little bit of
As long as
pizzazz.
you're truthful, as long as you're not
As long as you're truthful, and as long as it's like, again, it's like with you mentioned sugar spiking. It's a very good analogy. Everybody loves some cake, some candy, just don't make it just all full of sugar. That's all. So that's what I'm trying to say. What we're trying to do here is have people over watching us, mainly because of the content, okay, and not because of whatever we sprinkle in a video of a title. That said, I do know that we could have worked better on the description of some of our titles, and the reason that sometimes the titles seem a little bit bland is because we do cover a lot of topics in these conversations, and sometimes it's difficult to pick exactly what we would like to put in a title.
On that note, I think this is it for tonight.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the listeners that will join us later. We're encouraged by the numbers of people watching our conversations later on. We're very thankful for your support. If you want to see us continuing this process, these conversations, do like, share, and subscribe to this channel. It helps us grow, and it helps us grow us personally. And who knows? Maybe the day will come when we'll be able to have conversations with a lot of viewers that will not require clickbait titles.
Just spread the word. Just invite people to come over, and we'll continue producing all these podcasts and hopefully more.
To all our listeners, wherever you are, have a good night or a good day. Till next time.
Greetings, everyone, again, and good night and good day.